Good afternoon. Let me warmly welcome you, especially Némethy Dániel, our guest speaker, who will deliver the keynote speech this time. We launched this club at the beginning of the year 2013 because we wanted to bring our concepts related to business rules closer to the professional audience. After almost 10 years' experience, we realized that one of the most important subsets of business rules is the set of so-called authorization rules. That is why we invite experts who have experience in this topic. Last time we invited Mr. Raghu István, the Chief Security Officer of Erste Bank. He raised one aspect of the problems and we tried to give responses to that. Now for this event I asked Mr. Némethy Dániel to define the topic. Dániel, Director of KBC Services, identified that the challenges, problems and experiences related to IDM systems is an interesting topic worth sharing with us. I request all participants to raise questions and contribute if there are open issues. So I don't waste more words, I respectfully request you, Daniel, to deliver your keynote speech.
Mostly we know each other. I don't know whether it is appropriate to do a quick round to see who does what, whether this fits into this club format. This helps me focus on certain things.
My name is Tánczos Zoltán. I am the CEO of T-Logic. I have several roles in T-Logic. I have several hats. Now I'll put on the hat of TCPS, of our rule engine. I'm involved in the creation of it in various ways for 9 years now, and I really do believe in it. About our company shortly, it exists in this form since 1998. We participated in many banking projects and we gathered much experience with some general problems also. This made us very receptive to the so-called externalized authorization handling and made this topic very exciting for us. We started to address it based on an existing product, and only after minor and major but continuous failures we decided to go our own way. The product TCPS was established by 2007. That's when it got its name also. By now we refer to it as a generic business rule engine. So now when we launched this promotional discussion forum, we choose the problem of authorization and handling of access rights as a priority topic. Okay, that's enough. I'll hand over to Korpadi Zoltán, Regional CIO of ING.
My name is Zoltán Korpadi, IT leader of ING's Central and Eastern European region. This is the bank. ING is known in Hungary primarily as an insurance company, but there's a small bank as well. What drew me here? Besides the fact that we know each other with Zoltán for a long time now, and we witnessed the first steps of TCPS together at a previous bank, the title of Daniel's intro attracted me really. In such an enterprise environment, where people fight a huge amount of applications day by day, how can this not be a burning problem? How could we simply make them aware that it is burning, and the fact that it isn't handled properly costs us lots of resources?
My name is Elizabeth Angster. After 30 years in education I ended up here in T-Logic, and I am doing analysis, testing, documentation and training in the TCPS project. This is it briefly.
My name is Zoltán Tánczos Jr. Pretty shortly, I am the lead developer of the TCPS rule engine and responsible for the product. I participate here in this role.
My name is Imre Feher. I work for Alphanet for 15 years now. I participated in identity management implementation projects too. So I have personal experience with several vendors' products and I participate in today's meeting because I'm interested. My name is Anil Baranye. I have a relatively long track record as system analyst and consultant. I know the authorization handling methods of SAP and its problems quite well. Later I went to the field of IT security and I encountered the authorization handling problems of a large Hungarian company. We participated in the audit of a Lotus Notes-based authorization handling solution. We met many types of systems and the project was very instructive. My name is Tibor Zana. I work for Hungarian Telecom for 15 or 16 years now, for more than 10 years as IT auditor in the security area. Our company also has lots of IT systems, so the authorization problems and questions are continuously on the agenda. The topic is definitely interesting for me. My name is Gila Misarosh. Currently I manage the stock exchange conversion project at ERSTE Investment. Any project has to do with authorization handling and it needs users. I see that where I am now and everywhere that they come to you the afternoon before go live and say, this is not right. If she sees that and she doesn't see this, we'll need to redo the whole thing.
Thank you. We will return to Mr. Némethy Dániel.
I think this round was very good. We can see that there's serious knowledge gathered around the table, and I can adjust what I say. Authorization handling is an evergreen topic. I went away from the development area by now, since now I lead the infrastructure area. I control half of the infrastructure area at the Belgian company KBC and the service desk also reports to me. At the service desk we analyzed what are the typical errors. Say we'd clear out the top 5, how much less calls would we receive according to the classic Pareto principle? It's my bad luck that this was a very well developed and properly controlled service desk, so there were hardly any such low-hanging fruits. When I tried to pressurize my colleagues to indicate an area that would require a little more attention, then the favorite was the password. The user forgot a password, let's reset it somehow quickly. This takes the majority of current calls. The thing there is more varied because the country is bilingual but it's not sure they speak each other's language. So this is one such evergreen. The other one is the topic of access rights. I already know it in Dutch very well. So this is a constant pain. Why? Because there are 1,000 application packages out there, this includes the Office package of course. There is no serious, well thought through authorization system. It has grown some way, then they tried to string it together in several attempts from different directions. Just like in any Hungarian financial institution, please raise your hand if you know of an exception. We are happy that the surface of the shit is varnished and quite glossy. If it breaks through, then we'll have a very big problem. So our auditor colleagues are cautiously circling around the IT people. T-Logic invited me now to talk about this topic. I thought I'd check what I find in the literature. What did I miss? After all, I am a developer downgraded into manager. Here's this identity access management. I can personally report about 2 failed projects in the last 5 years. They had a long agony. Our Belgian colleagues are renowned for their careful planning. That's why we could build very cool machine rooms. They tried to think it through beforehand, including the last curve. They have a look at the Gartner research, the magic quadrant up there, Challenger and everything. Even this way they failed twice at selecting an authorization handling and identity management system that could be implemented successfully. First they made an attempt with HP, then I think the same thing returned under the name of ID2. KBC is a quite large conglomerate. There is the Belgian mother bank and the subsidiaries, the Czech one, KH, one in Ireland, in Bulgaria, and I listed only those that remain. The essence is that we did not manage to implement a unified, proper and fast identity management, so I will not dare to talk about access management in this regard. One part, the deeper and more critical one, is in the mainframe. The rest is gathered in the Active Directory. We could have a lengthy discussion about how an Active Directory can be introduced into such a global system. Active Directory is like a religion and there are factions stating this and that. The fight between these factions can be bloodier than the religious wars. We do have this. We happen to have a great initiative to have a unified desktop in the entire KBC. They pushed behind this a unified directory. I will not disclose to you how many minutes it took to log in from Hungary. No, I'd rather not say. So we'll start all over again. This is the classic situation I face myself. As a preparation I checked what science says. Two gentlemen are mentioned, David Ferriolo and Rick Kuhn. They wrote an article about role-based access control in '92. It simply says, authorization should be handled the way that there should be roles and users associated to them, and the roles should have authorizations. This is the short summary of that thing. It differs from the Microsoft world of groups. In principle, this model doesn't allow the individual person to have rights. If we could get this right and companies were stable enough, that would be a nice case. But I tell you frankly, I haven't seen a large corporation where you could achieve this clarification of roles based on the job descriptions. For example, the best I witnessed was in a branch network. Those unlucky people are really exchangeable. That was possible to translate to roles, and that covers half of the company. But at the headquarters, there are powerful departments consisting of 3 people, and you cannot just tell them you have this and that role. This is where it ends usually. So I saw this role-based thing implemented halfway. It sounds good, and if I were powerful enough I'd try to push the whole thing into this sort of direction. The usual statement related to this, and this is what I experienced in practice, that nobody implemented this in a clear way. I think the problem is that when a system is introduced at a company, the authorization handling principles of that system are not reconciled at all. It's solved somehow, either in a very simple way or in a very complicated way, as in SAP. When we saw that approximately 15, 20 or 30,000 authorization items got into the system, and I don't know how many people, it was a pain to even identify who is who and where she got the rights from. The other problem is that both the systems and the organizational structure are changing. There are general phenomena in what you related. One of the problems is the high number of DAM applications, each with their own authorization handling and their own solution for roles. The other one you touched is the problem of role accumulation. That's always there. When you begin, everybody sees it through, but when the organization is transformed, more and more roles appear.
I will make a provocative statement related to roles. I think the role definition cannot be done well. Probably not even in principle. Let me mention just one reason. The authorizations of existing systems are not role-oriented. They are read, write, delete type of authorizations. These systems can be customized to execute all tasks, but they are not built for executing all tasks. If a system is created to support task execution most efficiently, then the system itself defines the proper access rights. But the existing systems, so-called legacy systems, are not like this. The other problem I see is the inflation of roles that happens when a new system is introduced. Now think of agile system development and process implementation. Processes always create new tasks, and some implementations define new roles instead of defining new access rights, and this increases the number of roles and makes it unmanageable.
The provocation is justified and the example is good. For the moment it seems to me that in the current period there is no solution in sight that is essentially superior compared to the existing solution and is indeed usable for large companies. Today's companies are sitting on horrible heritages. An example, who gave her this right and what does it mean?
Sorry, I want to reflect on the keyword meaning. I mean, in many cases we register the authorizations, but often we don't even know what they cover.
There was a crisis at one of my former workplaces. An operator tampered with the SAP dictionary functions and it was a tragedy. The bosses decided to review the authorization handling the following way: team leaders should tell what authorizations their subordinates need and users should get only those rights. They couldn't solve this. Those with 15 or 20 subordinates quite simply couldn't specify what authorizations the employees need. None of the team leaders was able to or dared to assume the task, they just passed it to a lower level. SAP has like 80,000 transactions, some were authorized to 40-50,000 of those. And if somebody wasn't able to complete a task, The system administrator granted a wider authorization profile. Narrowing it down could not be solved in practice.
It is very typical that we increase the authorizations when in fact we want to narrow them down. This results from the nature of roles. Either we inflate the number of very granulated roles, that means we introduce a terribly large number of roles, or we use a reasonable number of roles at the same time, grant more authorization to certain people. Despite this, the rollout of changes in access rights I saw caused horrible fear to all participants whether the users will be able to do their work the day after. They decided it's less risky to give more authorization and explain it somehow during the audit.
I think we understand the experts here. I'd like to defend the leaders on the other side. We expect them to know each application used by the people reporting to them to a depth that they can immediately tell and sort who needs what and what is not needed. Honestly, this is totally absurd.
I would like to jump in here. Why is this expectation absurd? The expectation is absurd because the authorization checking implemented in the systems have in fact nothing to do with the task that the employee effectively performs using the system. Because if it were that simple, one business function equals one authorization, then obviously people would be able to tell which business function they use and which one they don't.
This is true. The other thing is, this was less absurd in a world where somebody became boss after climbing the whole ladder from workshop cleaner to shift manager. But in today's world people don't get there like this, at least not in the financial institutions. They don't have the faintest idea what actually happens on the floor. And it's not their main job indeed. I'd like to defend Zolty. My experience is that those who know SQL think that everything they see is a database, and they know 3 types of authorizations. A field can be read, modified and deleted. And the world is composed of these. Now this is indeed impossible to remember. But Zolty said that the missing element is the function-based one, what authorizations they should have actually on a business process level, rather than which field of which table. And that's where they got stuck at undisclosed limited. Whenever a new function shows up, the first question is, which field of which table is updated? Then the second question, who is allowed to update this? Who is allowed to read and who is allowed to delete? As soon as these are answered, everybody feels like the issue is resolved. This way there's a database having several hundred tables with several thousand unique authorizations associated to it and nobody is able to oversee it. So the problem is not that somebody is a boss and has gone insane. The task is impossible in principle. The external environment changes radically and continuously. On the one hand the status is constantly interim. On the other hand totally new criteria are introduced. I'll give you one example, it's not very new nor very old. In principle there is a law on European level stating that you own your personal data. Somebody please show me a financial institution where the client said, starting tomorrow I waive your right to manage my personal data. And the access was removed or invalidated in all systems and stored backups. Then another challenge appears, the cloud. The whole problem crawls out of the company. I think there are serious challenges here. Probably each financial institution gives thought to making their environment cheaper, at least they try to push their office environment out to the cloud. Mobility appears, mobiles, tablets, work from home, etc. Time will push these authorizations tied to physical locations out into the virtual space. Work from home, for example in Belgium this means a very serious financial advantage. It is supported, people are paid money to work from home. Well, but from home they are not supposed to be able to execute financial transactions that are to be executed in a branch. A static authorization system is not enough. Traceability is required. How did the distribution of authorizations look say 2.5 years ago? And why? You need heaps of data to respond to these. I race through the topic quite quickly. Please contribute, tell us what this has to do with the new methods, with the web, SOA and processes. I think what Gila said was a very interesting possibility to move on, because you don't need to learn each application for that.
Thank you, Daniel. If you allow, based on your draft, we will summarize our thoughts in a few, maximum 4 or 5 slides.
I think it is important to go through the definitions. By authorization, I understand the whole system of permissioning conditions that describe the rights to use a specific function of the system through a specific interface. Also, by primitive authorization, I understand the entire system of permissioning conditions for an individually accessible business function. There will be places on my slides where I put this primitive authorization between quotation marks, where I refer to the more traditional approach, and where I use it without quotation marks, I refer to the previous definition. Similarly, the role has to reference an indivisible elementary task, not a group of tasks, but a well-defined elementary task that has to be executed definitely by a single person. For example, the opening of a residential account is such a task. The owner of the role requires authorizations in order to perform the task. When we talk about the role's authorizations, I already assume that the role will not have an unrestricted access in any business function, but it will be tied to certain conditions. As the example shows, the opening of a residential account as an individual task defines an individual role. There are functions connected to this, like creating a new customer or creating a new account, but none of these is available exclusively to this task. It has been said during the discussion that this sounds very nicely, but we haven't seen it implemented. I think this is the essence. There has to be a one-to-one mapping between the role and the user group. This definition and consistent usage of the authorization guarantees the reversibility of this process. That is, from the group memberships we can deduce the actual authorization. We also talked about why the leaders cannot list what existing authorizations their subordinates use. I already said there that the authorizations have lost their connection with the actual functions that could form the basis of a role definition with organizational approach. The IT mapping of this is a user group. However, this has been said as well, we sit on a heritage where numerous systems exist having their own user database and authorization handling, and we cannot think that the role will unambiguously match a group in the near future. Currently, a role can mean many accounts and many group memberships. Finally, I think that the definition of a job is in fact a collection of roles.
I received a mail, here's this Excel, and I should tell whether the authorizations are alright. There was a row that said Access System. I wrote back, what is this? Then I receive a reply more than a week later saying that nobody in the company knows what this is, but they'll find out. I think this is a very typical case.
A few thoughts about the proliferation of authorizations. We already discussed why it happens. Hopefully, the primitive authorizations are between quotation marks everywhere here. Let's stay with the example of opening an account. This is a really simple example, but with 5 types of customers, 80 branch offices and 4 types of user qualification level, that's already 1,600 possibilities. We think it's a fundamentally wrong approach to define different authorizations for these different cases. The authorization must belong unambiguously to the function. So it's about to define the account opening authorizations, and then later the system of conditions which permit or deny actual account opening, and this can have multiple permission and fulfillment branches. This system of conditions can and has to be described with business rules. Why do roles proliferate? I think this slide is important because essentially my final conclusion is that roles proliferate because the authorizations are not handled on the function level. My opinion is that both have a totally common root, the difference is only the approach of application programming. If I create roles, that's in fact only there to create the possibility of grouping incorrectly defined authorizations, so the roles will proliferate. If I create only authorizations, then those will be inflated. So the root of the two problems is the same. There is no strict one-to-one mapping between functions and elementary authorizations. Is IDM necessary? I think this is not a question. IDM is definitely necessary given the heritage. At the same time, it had been said that IDM implementations fail or achieve their objectives only partially. We can ask for the reason, and we heard one or two answers. Because we cannot define the authorizations, because it is very difficult to define precisely the set of rules or the workflow controlling the distribution. I think the short answer is that we expect too much from IDM systems. IDMs are administrative tools that meant to provide a unified interface, a unified representation to the many kinds of user database. It will not solve the problem of role proliferation, it will not solve the problem of proliferation of authorizations, and it will not solve the problem that in case of some authorizations we don't know at all what they actually permit in the system. I think an IDM system only helps us survive. On the long run, if we don't break away from these approaches that brought the company's authorization handling to this state, then these problems will be reproduced on an even higher level. As time passes, they will outgrow the capability of IDMs even more, and it will be even more difficult to achieve control and transparency. I think that the only solution for the future is to implement authorizations in a unified way, using a sufficiently generic rule engine, using a one-to-one mapping between functions and authorizations, with a sufficiently complex set of rules built on the full context of the protected function. Clearly stated, I don't know the solution for liquidating the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but I know that we shouldn't throw away plastic bottles anymore, because then these islands wouldn't increase in size. This is shortly my final conclusion with regards to authorization handling with IDM. Additionally, we formulated a few thoughts about possible loopholes and chances we should grab.
This slide and the next one are my fault. Once again, the summary of the problem. There are many systems, each of them having their separate authorization handling. Probably this is the root cause of all our problems. The professional community did not recognize this, or they were not able to force the vendors to externalize authorization handling. Probably they were afraid how customers would handle this locally.
I would like to add that in my opinion, there was no rule engine that could have been able to cover the task, and the standards are still missing that would describe the function of a powerful and standard authorization engine.
The very essential change I see is that the market is shifting towards BPM, business process solutions. This is confirmed by Gartner research also. We can expect significant movements in this market. Luckily, the BPM and new front-end systems are designed in a way that users can perform their actual tasks using them, while legacy systems were designed in a way that the task can be performed after some parameterization and lengthy trainings. I think this is a very significant difference, especially because these newly created frontends or human workflow interfaces display exactly that context that can be used together with the desired function for evaluating the authorization rule. In my opinion, it clearly results from the above that from the function-oriented approach of authorization handling in most of the legacy systems, it is practically not possible to define the roles properly. To put it mildly, it doesn't succeed usually. Given the above, my opinion is that this is not a coincidence. IDM, identity management, was created as an attempt to get the best from this bad situation. I am not sure this is the best thing because the best thing is if we try to handle the core problem. I'm sure you also know several core systems that have some kind of new web-based front-end user interfaces. In these web frontends, it is easy to find the points where the entire context can be grasped and the authorization check can be performed in a unified way using an appropriate rule engine. In these new solutions, that means both the front-end and the BPM solutions, the roles can be identified explicitly without mapping. We can associate rights to them easily. So the essence is, authorizations are created without mapping. They can be read without any separate interpretation. If we start moving into this direction, for instance, we will use a new user-friendly front-end interface, a coercive force pairs to handle exercise in a new context-sensitive way, because the condition to permit the new context simply cannot be assembled from the function-oriented elementary authorizations of the old systems. Luckily, these steps don't need to be taken all at once. This is not a project, but steps need to be taken even if the two approaches will coexist for a long time. Thank you for your attention.